I will present today the results of the first paper of my PhD. In my PhD, I look in general at the relation between educational level and different family formation processes. And in this first paper, we want to look at marginalization of women with low educational attainment on the partner market. So how has the probability of selecting into stable cohabitation changed specifically for lower educated women. I will focus on the results for women in this presentation, but also will compare it shortly to the results for men. So first of all, why would we expect a change in the educational gradient of cohabitation? As you've also heard in several presentations today, women's earnings are more increasingly important to secure families' economic well-being for several reasons. So firstly, we see that stability of formerly typically male blue-collar occupations has declined. Secondly, women's labor market positions have improved compared to men's. And then also finally in younger generations, we see that women with higher degrees in education outnumber men. And in couples where there are different levels of education, it's often now the women that have higher education. So these are reasons why we could expect that lower educated women who tend to have lower earning potential in the labor market face increasing difficulties to find a stable partner and to start cohabiting with a partner. In terms of the contribution, so studies have focused often on single countries, so we want to see more of a descriptive trend across regions in Europe. We want to add to the empirical evidence of women's educational gradient, and we include also the most recent rounds of the ESS from 22. And then our first hypothesis is that the transition rates to first cohabitation, both married and unmarried, decreased stronger for lower compared to higher educated women in more recent cohorts. So there we look at ages 15 to 35. And then hypothesis 2 is that the likelihood of women between the ages 35 to 45 to have ever cohabited, again married or unmarried, decreased for stronger for the lower compared to higher educated women. For the first hypothesis, we use event history analysis, and there we use ESS round 3 and 9. We look at the transition to first cohabitation, and we follow respondents from the age of 15. So in this rounds, we have retrospective information. And then we calculate Cox models stratified by 2 cohorts and 3 educational levels. We also control for enrollment in education as a time-varying variable. And then for the second hypothesis, we use logistic regression. We combined ESS round 1 to 10. We take the sample of women that are 35 to 45 at the time of the interview, and we look at whether these women have cohabited, ever cohabited by that age. For education, we have low, medium, and high. Low means 0 to 2 on the ISCET scale. So these are people that leave the educational system before reaching the high school level. And we control for parental education, migration background, and religious denomination. So first of all, before showing the results, I wanted to show some descriptives. So we can see here the share of educational levels across countries, which also corresponds to other data sources on this distribution. And then we also aggregated for the regions. We can see, of course, that the share of lower educated declined across cohorts. We also can see here that, for example, for the Nordic countries, the share is very small in our sample. So in the recent cohort, we have around 5% of people that are low educated. which we also have to keep in mind, of course, then for the interpretation of the results. Now the first hypothesis, transition to cohabitation. We can see here estimated survival to first cohabitation. So this means we control for the covariates. And then you can see this is other results for Western Europe for low, medium, and high educated. And then we have compared the two cohorts. We can see first for the highly educated that the survival curves are very similar for the two cohorts. And this was found in for all regions that we look at. And then for the low educated, we see more variation. So we see that the survival curve for the more recent cohort is higher, so they have a lower hazard of transitioning to cohabitation. We see this also for the Eastern European countries in our sample. And then for the Nordic and the Southern European countries, we do not find significant differences among the low educated between the two cohorts. I wanted to show also the results for the Nordic countries. So yeah, as I also said, it's a small sample, a selective sample. So we see that this is also leads to high uncertainty. And now the results for the second hypothesis. So here we show the predicted probabilities of ever cohabiting by ages 35 to 45, and we look at cohorts starting from 1960 to 1985. And we can see here that in the cohort 1960, we still see that low and medium educated have higher probabilities of ever cohabiting. And then we see that this decreased for the lower educated. It's similar for the Southern European countries. So again, we see here the higher probability for low and medium educated, and then a convergence in the more recent cohort. For the Eastern European countries, it's also similar, but yeah, the results here are not significant. And then for the Nordic countries, we see that the confidence interval for the lower educated is quite large, so yeah, here. And then what is also interesting is to compare the results for women to those of men. So these are the predicted probabilities for men. And there we can see that across the whole period that we're looking at, highly and medium educated men are either more likely to have ever cohabited by that age, or there is no significant difference. So in conclusion, we can see that women with low educational attainment typically exhibited a higher likelihood of cohabiting in the older cohorts, but that this has changed in the more recent cohorts where they exhibit similar or lower rates compared to women with higher degrees. And of course, there are several limitations. So as I said, the lower sample size and the very high selectivity of low educated people, yeah, across all regions, but especially for the Nordic countries, we have a smaller sample size. In the ESS data, we only have information on first cohabitation, so we don't have the complete partnership histories. We also don't know if someone is not cohabiting but does have a partner. And then what I want to do also moving forward is to also incorporate information on employment and moving out of the parental home. And there we also have data on first employment, first time moving out of the parental home. Yeah. Thank you for your attention.